What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Nerdy Curls, and today I'm going to be talking to you about humectants. Now, I know in previous videos I talked about using humectants with low porosity hair, but I didn't really go into any kind of detail as to what they are, where do you find them, like, you know, what are they used for? So let me start with this. A humectant is a moisturizing agent that is added to a lot of products in both hair care and skin care that is used to retain moisture or retain water. That way it can actually keep whatever you're trying to moisturize hydrated. Well, not necessarily hydrated. There's a difference between hydration and moisturization, but to make sure to retain that moisture into that area. And so who uses humectants? Well, really anybody and everybody uses humectants. And the reason that they're used is, one, they're already in products, and a lot of people, unless you're following like the curly girl method or what have you, they don't really read labels. So people are saying, oh, I need to avoid glycerin because glycerin is really bad for their hair because they don't like the humectant properties of glycerin, but then they end up buying the Kinky Curly Knot Today leave-in, which has humectants, but they're just other humectants. And so if you're trying to avoid all humectants, you should probably know exactly what they are, read the label, and make sure that if you're needing to avoid them, you avoid them. But if you're trying to use them, know that glycerin isn't the end-all be-all of any kind of humectants. There's so many different types, and they're not necessarily bad for your hair if you use them properly. So why do people use them? They use them to attract moisture. For me, I use it to attract moisture into my hair because, one, I live in a super dry climate and it's really easy for my hair to get dried out, but also because I have low porosity hair, if I can get that moisture into the hair, I seal it that way in my dry climate. It doesn't end up going away, but then it keeps my hair moisturized for the rest of the day or the rest of the week, you know, just depending on when I'm looking to re-moisturize my hair. So when are they used? This is where it's really going to depend on your hair. And I have a little cheat sheet that I wrote out that kind of helps. So when you're going to be using humectants is going to really depend on where you live and what the dew point is. So the dew point, if you don't remember elementary school science, the dew point is the temperature that dew or moisture ends up collecting on things like grass and things outside. So most of the time, the dew point is a lot less than the actual temperature outside, just depending on where you live. If you live in a humid climate, it's possible that it's 85 degrees outside and the dew point is, I don't know, like 65. It's really just when moisture is pretty visible, whether it's collecting on a leaf or in the air. But if the dew point is between, I don't know, like 10, 15 degrees and like 30 degrees. So if it's below freezing, obviously that's going to be a super dry climate. Like you see this a lot in the winter. And this is something where, or this is a temperature range or a dew point range where it may be better to avoid humectants, or if you are going to use them, make sure you use the right type of humectants, which I'm going to make another video talking about whether or not humectants are all the same, but make sure you use the right type of humectants for your hair and what's going to work for your hair, but also make sure you seal that humectant in with an emollient. So make sure you're using a moisturizing oil or even like a heavy butter to be able to seal that in. That way it doesn't just completely pull the moisture from your hair that you're trying to keep into your hair. If it's between, I don't know, like 30 degrees to about 40, 45 degrees, that's going to be a mid-range. So this is really common when it's like in between seasons, when, you know, is it going to be rainy? Is it going to be shiny? Like, what's it going to look like? So with that, that's going to be trial and error. So for that, again, that's going to be just dependent on your hair, how your hair is actually feeling, and whether or not it's going to be able to tolerate humectants at that point in time. If you are going to be using humectants with that dew point, make sure, just like with the dry range, you are really going to want to make sure that you're using oils and butters to seal that in. And if the dew point's between 40, 45-ish and like 60-ish degrees, that is when humectants are awesome for like so many different people. You still want to make sure that you're going to seal it in to make sure that there's that film there, so that way it doesn't just completely either evaporate out or your hair ends up having all of the moisture robbed by the humectant. But this is such a good place for a lot of people's curls to thrive. I have a friend that she's from Puerto Rico, and she, we live in Colorado, and she's like, oh my God, when I'm in Puerto Rico, my curls are amazing, but here, not so much. It's because we live in a super dry climate with a lot lower dew point. Anything that's about 65 degrees or higher when it comes to the dew point, it really is going to depend on the look that you're going for. The reason that I say that is if you are going to straighten your hair or stretch your hair, and you use humectants to style your hair with that stretching, and you go outside, you stretched your hair for nothing. It is going to scrunch up, and you're going to end up just pulling your hair back in a puff. Sorry. That's just the way that it is. If you do choose to use humectants in this because, you're not stretching your hair, what have you, still, with any range, make sure that you seal your hair with an emollient of your choice, whether it's going to be a moisturizing oil or like a nice hair butter. Make sure that you are doing that, because if not, your hair it's gonna end up being a mess, and you're like, why is my hair sticky? I don't understand. Why is my hair dry even though it's like 47% humidity outside and it's only 60 degrees? Like, I don't understand. Like, the dew point is 42. Why? That would be why. And so where is humectants, or where do you use humectants and you have your hair thrive? That's going to depend. So it's going to depend on your hair and how your hair receives the humectants. And also it's going to depend on the time of year and everything like that. So rather than focusing on where you're at, I would honestly take a moment and look at the weather forecast, look at the dew point, and kind of go more so off of that, because it's probably going to be a little bit better of an indicator, instead of saying, well, I live in Vegas, so I'm going to use a humectant. Sorry, you got to get just a tiny bit more sciencey than that. Sorry. And so how are humectants used? So you can use humectants in literally every single step, and people end up using them in every single step, whether they realize it or not. I've literally watched natural hair YouTubers who say, oh, I can't use humectants, and they are pre-pooing their hair with honey. Honey is a natural humectant. And then they wash their hair, they deep condition it, which still, because you use that honey, there's still going to be a little bit in there. So they deep condition their hair. Then after they rinse that out, then they use the Kinky Curly Not Today leave-in, which is an awesome leave-in. I love that leave-in. And that has marshmallow root in it. And it has slippery elm. Both of those are humectants. Then they go on to use the DIY flaxseed gel, which is also a humectant, whether you realize it or not. Now, I'm not saying this is bad. This is actually really, really, really good. But it lends to the actual point that not all humectants are the same. So I am going to be making a completely different video about that, because I feel like there needs to be a little bit more of an explanation. That way you kind of understand what it is that's going on and why you might not be able to use glycerin, but you can use flaxseed gel, and it's still going to give you like amazing results, and you don't know why. So I'm hoping that giving a little bit more of a breakdown as to what a humectant is and like when you're going to be using it, I hope that this is helpful. If it is, please make sure that you leave a comment down below, and also follow me on social media. I will go ahead and put somewhere, I don't know, my handles. That way you can follow me on Twitter as well as on Instagram. And thank y'all so much for coming by my channel and watching this video, and I hope y'all have a great day. Bye.